I just thought of a brilliant, absolutely brilliant way to explain why I had you do the reading and a quiz before class, why I forced you to do the reading before class. Philosophy is like a strange town. It's like a strange country. In fact, philosophy is another planet. And so there's got to be a settle-in time before you get used to it. And in every individual bit of reading, it's like going to a new town in that planet. So when you're doing the reading, it's like learning your way around a new town. Nothing makes sense, and you have no idea where anything is, but you've got to sort of wander aimlessly through it for a few days before it starts to sink in. So I want you to do the reading early, at least before class, so things have a chance to start sinking in. You need that wandering time, that aimless time of confusion, before you're ready to start really deeply understanding what's going on. Now, I think that's a brilliant metaphor. Of course, it took me like 5 years to think of it. So either I'm brilliant or very, very, very slow. Okay, the other thing here is I'm doing a bit of foreshadowing for what we're going to do next week. And what we're going to do next week is look at criticisms of Plato. And I've done that a couple of times already, and I haven't properly set it up. So I'm trying to set it up. And something I'd like you to think about, or at least have in your notes, is that when I talk about Plato's theory of knowledge, I talk about justified true belief. Very cut and dry. When Palmer talks about it, the author of our book, in the text, he says you have to believe it, it has to be true, and you have to be able to give the logos. And if you're anything like me, you look at a phrase like give the logos and go, what the hell is that? Thank you. Give the logos. What does that mean? Well, I want you to hold that as something that's in contention, because me and Palmer disagree about what give the logos or give a justification means for Plato. And I want to ask, basically, what we're going to think about is, if we are charitable, if we interpret Plato as much as possible as making sense, if we make a reasonable effort to have Plato saying something as sensible as, Plato may be completely wrong, but we don't want to attribute stupidity to him unnecessarily, right? If we can find a smart way of interpreting Plato, we'll take the smart way. So if we interpret Plato as saying something intelligent, what do we think Plato's view is? So, next week, I'm going to be talking about justified Plato's epistemology and what might be wrong with it. Today we're going to do what is called the simile of the line.
Let's give the logos. So good.
Let's give the logos, yeah. I'm going to give the logos of the line. That makes no sense. Talking of things that make no sense, Did anyone notice anything funny about this title? See, one thing I'm trying to teach in this class, one thing I want to promote is the sort of emotional habit, the sort of reaction of critical reading. When you come across something that makes sense, something that doesn't seem to make sense to you, or something that's wrong, something that seems wrong, I want you to notice that. I want you to be looking for stuff that's wrong. It doesn't mean that it is wrong, because if something seems wrong to you, that might be you might have just misunderstood it. And then you work on understanding it. But if you work on understanding something, you think about it over and over, and it's still just wrong, then maybe it is wrong. And there's something that bugs me about this. So did anyone notice something funny about just this title, calling it the simile of the line? Simile of my computer. Say again?
Simile has 2 L's.
Simile has 2 L's, that's it?
No.
That's supposed to be an I.
Sorry.
Don't worry about my spelling. This is not a class on spelling, because if it was, I would not be qualified to teach it. What is a simile? It's where you say something is similar to something else. It's kind of like an analogy, and I don't know the difference between a simile and an analogy. Okay, the simile of the line. Knowledge is like a line. Here's a line. Knowledge is like this. No, it isn't. Okay, this thing is called the simile of the line. It has apparently been called the simile of the line for hundreds of years. I don't know who came up with the name. If I did, I would get a time machine, go back in time, find him after he'd given it this name, and slap him. It's not a simile. I don't know what to call it, but it's not a simile. So, okay, so is this important? Or am I just stupid? Don't answer that. Well, actually, I prefer crazy to stupid. I'd rather be crazy than stupid. Well, there's only one little point here. When you read textbooks or any other kind of writing that's supposed to convince you of something, where someone's giving over a point of view, read carefully and take the person's words seriously. If he calls something a simile and it's not a simile, you're supposed to notice stuff like that. Because once in a while, you'll come up with stuff that is important. Someone will make mistakes. Later in the book, there will be a sentence where Donald Palmer says, well, obviously, since that's true and that's true, obviously this third thing must be true. And there's a very curious thing about this sentence later in the book. He ends up saying something that cannot possibly be true. It's worse than calling this a simile. It doesn't matter what you call this thing. He says something that, when you think about it, when you take his words seriously and you work out what they mean, and therefore what he is actually saying, he is saying something catastrophically stupid, something what is possibly the dumbest thing ever said in a philosophy textbook. might not be the dumbest thing ever said, but it is the dumbest thing, very possibly the dumbest thing ever said in a philosophy textbook. But the first time I read it, I just went over it. Boom. And the second time I read it, I went over it. Boom. And then it was like and then I sort of started ignoring it because it didn't make any sense to me. And then I started looking at it, and I said, wait a moment, not only does this not make any sense to me, it does not make any sense at all. It is, in fact, stupid.
Call him an idiot?
No, he's a brilliant man. This is one of the best philosophy textbooks that's a great comment, by the way. Yes. This is one of the best textbooks I've ever seen. It is, I think, the best philosophy textbook on the market. Other intro textbooks are much thicker and more expensive, and they fall into two categories. The unreadable and the totally stupid. There is a philosophy textbook out there that is written by an idiot. I won't give the name, but it's a very popular textbook, and the writer is demonstrably an idiot. Drives me nuts. I'm only a little irritated upon it. In fact, I kind of enjoy this. I love being able to say, well, there's a stupid thing in there.
You should write a book.
You know how much people make in royalties from textbooks? It's minuscule. I know a couple of people who've written textbooks.
Don't make money.
It doesn't really make that much money. That's what I said. Okay, so now we're going to do, I don't know, what we're really going to do is Plato's ontology and its epistemological consequences. Because I've been thinking about this thing for quite a while, and that's what I think this is. Now, yes?
What was your point for simile of the line?
There's a stupid title, and if you're doing critical reading, you catch stuff like that. It's in the book. Now, even the best book will have dumb stuff. Even my book, my online critical thinking book, there are a couple of things that are less than perfectly brilliant. No, I'm just saying. But the point about that rant was to convey that kind of thing is important. Not this particular incident, but having the attitude and practice of reading things carefully so you notice stuff like, wait a moment, that's not a simile. Is anyone here, am I wrong? Is it a simile? Is knowledge like a line? Knowledge is like a line. It just goes on forever in one direction. And if you look back the other way, it goes on, unless it's like a short line.
No.
Yeah. I need a new pencil. All right. So, who's still confused about the simile of the line here?
I don't like it.
All right. So there's a couple of things I want to say about this divided line business. The divided line business. I'll call it that. That makes as much sense. Think about the two columns. We have two columns here. Well, that's too complicated. What I'd like you to think about is there's a particular way of laying this out that works. And if I tried to do it a different way, it wouldn't work. And at the end of the class, I'm going to rant and rave and be really irritating and boring about, my self-esteem is really high right now. At the end of the class, I'm going to talk about why it has to be done that way and what it says about Plato's philosophy. So we'll take this as a line, and then we're going to divide it. Plato divides. Plato, of course, would have a whiteboard marker that had to write out. Plato we could call it Plato's matrix. Also, the versions are not very even. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. Plato asked you to imagine the least important, least reliable knowledge that you could have. What could you have in your head that that you say to yourself, I can't believe I know that. Why do I know that? I don't want to know that. And yes, it's stuff. Plato has this hierarchy of knowledge and this hierarchy of feeling. He wants you to know what is the least important kind of knowledge. It is knowledge of images, knowledge of representations, knowledge of art, knowledge of imaginary things. For Plato, that is something that's sorry, I gotta shut down my computer. Okay, so Plato's idea of the least important kind of knowledge is knowledge of images. Yeah, what is What's the least real thing you can find in the world? What disappears at a moment's notice? Well, your shadow. As you're walking through the sunlight, you cast a shadow. You go into the shadow of the building, shadow disappears. You're out again, and if the sun goes behind a cloud, your shadow disappears. Heck, you stand next to someone else, and your shadow can disappear. That person might look taller. So there are things that go in and out of existence, And they don't even have a reality of their own. They can't exist on their own. They're dependent on the stuff in the next level. They're dependent on this. So what we're doing here is working our way up the ladder of reality. But in order to describe a kind of knowledge, in order to describe the least important kind of knowledge, I have to talk about this. I haven't even written anything over here. This is the knowledge side. This is epistemology. This is ontology. Now, so I watched the Animatrix last night, the new Renaissance, and I sort of had a vague idea that it existed, but I'd never seen it. I didn't know anything like it. So up until last night, I was ignorant of that animated backstory to the movie Matrix. But what do I know now? Do I know anything about the world? Do I know anything about the world outside of this video file, outside of this artistic production? The answer is no, I don't. Artistic productions do not create anything real, they create imaginary stuff. So to know that kind of stuff, it's like knowing Star Trek trivia. Who the hell cares? So, notice the peculiar thing. I ought to be talking about epistemology, but all I can really say about this epistemology, it concerns these things. You are having too much fun paying attention. I wish you didn't be bored now. Look at my, watch me. Okay, so I say I'm talking about epistemology, but it's just knowledge of what's on this side of the line. So this is the armature. This is the framework. This is the stuff that's important. We're really talking about Plato's ontology. You remember what ontology is? Who knows what ontology is?
Like bones or something?
What?
Bones or something?
That's osteology.
Plus house.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another thing about critical listening. If I use a word that you don't understand, you say, what's a You say, what's ontology? That means that I have completely failed to explain it properly. And that means I'm stupid. And I don't want you to know I'm stupid. So I'll make up something to pretend that it's your fault. See how this works? You should have read the book! You'd know what ontology is if you've read the book. So I get up, you correct me, you find out something I've done wrong, I get mad. That's the way. Now, ontology is the study of being. Who knows what being is? Being is just existence, what is, right? This coffee cup exists. Now we will study the nature of existence. And it turns out there's a lot you can say about existence. Because the coffee cup has much firmer existence than its own shadow. That is hardly casting a shadow at all. Yes?
Epistemology is the study of knowledge.
Right. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. Good question. Thereby now revealing that I had not put in sufficient effort into explaining what epistemology is. So, these images are dependent on sensible objects. Hamburgers, aardvarks, battleships, geez. Things, stuff. If you can have a sensory experience of it, it's a sensible object. It's an object that could be sensed if someone deployed his or her senses on it. Like the map of California labor history at the back wall is a sensible object, because if you decided to turn around and look at it, you would have a sensory experience. You get a collection, an ensemble of sense data. So, there's things and, or you might call it things and stuff. Now, here, yes.
Are people sensible objects then?
Yes. Real people are sensible objects. Imaginary people are just images. So,
Is epistemology and ontology similar? I mean, like, you have to know what it's for the person sensible.
well, Plato would say it's the other way around. That something has to be a sensible object in order for you to have knowledge of it as a sensible object. Or an image has to exist for you to have knowledge. There's a relationship between epistemology and ontology. And it can go, there's this issue of direction of fit. You ever seen one of those cartoons where a soft object, such as a person or a giant anthropomorphic chicken, is thrown against a wall, and instead of smishing, makes a person-shaped hole in the wall? Right? So, in that case, the wall was made to fit the person. In normal life, what happens? What fits what? Does the wall, the person fits the wall, right? The person who is, bulgy and nubby runs into the wall and becomes flat on that surface. Squish. Depending on how fast, the degree of squishing depends on how fast the person hits the wall. If the person hits the wall at about 3,000 miles an hour, well, I won't go there. So this is the issue of direction of fit. What fits what? And in Plato, it seems to me quite clear that ontology is the wall. Ontology is the hard object, and epistemology has to sort of accommodate itself to that. So this is really, this thing of the divided line, it's all about the content of knowledge. It's about what things are known, not what knowledge is. So, So in this divided line, I'm in the world. And that means Plato, that means there are different kinds of knowledge. But this is not about what knowledge is. Imagine I'm talking about different kinds of cars, different Toyota, Ford, Kia, Yugo. If anyone remembers the Yugo, bad car with parents' generation. There's going to be a lot of cars coming in from China in the next few years. We've gone through the crap. But telling you how these things are different really doesn't tell you what a car is. Another way of looking at this is you think about soft drink cans. Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, Mountain Dew, Squirt, annoying cream soda. Okay. Ask what is a can. Okay. What different kinds of cans there are? Well, there's Coke cans, and there's Mountain Dew cans, and someone says, well, wait a moment, that doesn't tell me what a can is. How are these things different? Well, the Coke can has Coke in it. The Mountain Dew can has Mountain Dew in it. But that's not a difference in the can, that's a difference in what it's holding. So here, the difference between these two kinds of knowledge is not a difference in what knowledge is, it's just a difference in the object of knowledge. So the real difference is over here, and this is just the knowledge of column. Now, Plato doesn't have much use for this kind of knowledge. I'm going to call it like weak knowledge, or pathetic, or trivial. Now, there's two more levels for Plato. The next level is the stuff we don't see directly. We know it's there because of the shapes of things in the world, the way the world works. So here, we talk about the laws of nature, laws of physics, natural selection, the mathematically describable something that's sort of built into the fabric of reality, built into space-time, the way things have to be. What scientists study, what we figure out, the way things work. Now, Plato thinks that that is much more important than knowing physical objects. See, one of the things that's different about the ancient world is there's a sense of value, nobility. Plato thinks that this is higher knowledge, more noble, more valuable, intrinsically more valuable. And it has a relationship to this in that just as this layer is dependent on sensible objects, this layer, sensible objects, are themselves dependent on the laws of nature. So, this part of it, I mean, so far, makes a lot of sense to me. Okay? Right? Shadows, images, and everything, that's all dependent on the laws of nature. If you've ever studied creativity, one good model of creativity, of how creativity works, if you want to start in on a creative career or just, is to take existing objects and change them and recombine them in new ways. And you take something gives you an idea. You got this idea of inspiration. Quite often, the inspiration is just some random thing you see. You say, that would be good in a story. In anime, there are a couple of animators who are fascinated with World War II, old German airplanes, German experimental airplanes from the end of World War II. Has anyone seen the anime Battleship Yamato? It's a freaking battleship that travels through. I mean, the first time I saw it, I said, what the hell is this? This is a battleship. It's got a hull, like it sits in the water, but it's flying through space. What the hell? I don't know, it makes no sense. But it's a freaking battleship. There might not be any life at all. It certainly wouldn't be our kind of life. There's some certain physical constants. If they were a little larger or a little smaller, and the rest of the universe could handle that, because we don't know how they fit together yet, our kind of life would be impossible. Maybe there'd be a different kind of life, maybe no life at all. But there's all kinds of physical changes that can be made to the laws of nature that would eliminate life or make our kind of life impossible. Gravity was a little stronger or a little weaker. Actually, if the strong nuclear force was a little stronger, there would be no hydrogen. I'm really shaking on that, but there's something like that. I'm sure I got that wrong. But it was sort of one of the nuclear forces, if it was stronger, there would be the kind of probably wouldn't be free hydrogen. Maybe there'd be no helium. No, we can do without helium. But there'd be one of the elements that's vital for life, just couldn't exist for our kind of life. I don't know about weird Star Trek. So everything depends on the laws of nature. We get our world from the laws of nature. Thank you, laws of nature. Very nice world. I like it. But wait, there's more. Now, what's the epistemological side of this? Can anyone guess what I'm going to write here? I'm going to write knowledge of. Knowledge of the laws of nature. Now, this is a higher knowledge. In the book, Palmer refers to the bottom two layers of knowledge as opinion. I don't like that usage because opinion has another meaning, but it's very Platonic. Plato just sort of says, well, yeah, you know a lot about art. Right. Imagine how Plato would deal with someone who knew a lot about art, who knew a lot about paintings, storytelling, something like that. Plato would just roll his eyes. That's not knowledge. Someone who knows geography would be in a little better shape. Well, at least you know something that's real, at least for a while. Sensible objects, things in the world, are temporary, they're fragile, they go away. They break down. Some of them last for a while, others last only. I'm trying to. Can anyone give me an example of something that used to exist but no longer exists? What? I'm still not.
Dodo bird.
The dodo bird. Oh yes, there used to be dodos. There are no more. Oh, the passenger pigeon. There used to be enormous flocks of passenger pigeons, and then we shot them all.
Dinosaur.
Dinosaurs, yes. Dinosaurs are gone. But apparently we didn't shoot them. It's one of the few things in the world for which I cannot blame Ronald Reagan. I like to blame Ronald Reagan for everything. Well, I say Reagan's. Even if it happened 100 years before I was born, I can find a way to blame him. But the laws of nature don't go away. The laws of nature are eternal. Once you know physics, you know something that's not going to change. If you know the state of the United States law today, that's something that could change tomorrow. If you know about the existence of nation states, there are things that could disappear tomorrow. Planets can disappear. Stars blow up. The laws of nature are eternal. How they're expressed in space changes over time. Plato didn't know this. Plato didn't know anything about cosmology, the Big Bang, or anything like that. But the laws of nature are certainly eternal. Now, knowledge of things and stuff is based on the senses. Knowledge you can get through the senses. You don't have to bother with the senses for knowledge of images, because that's based on imagination. You notice how Einstein disagrees with Plato? Einstein once said, imagination is more important than knowledge. I have no idea what he meant, but it sounds good. So, for Plato, imagination is trivial. You want something else. You want something different. So we have the knowledge of laws of nature. And that's based on Well, I don't know, understand, I'll call it understanding, I don't know. You really have to work hard to understand the laws of nature. If anyone had a physics class or a biology class or a chemistry class or whatever the other sciences are, you know, it's all bloody math. It's all mathematical relationships. That's hard. I can't do that. Now, from the modern point of view, from a modern scientific rational point of view, the picture so far looks great. I don't see anything wrong with this right here, except for the value judgments. I really don't think that knowledge of images is any less important than knowledge of scientific laws. They're important for different areas of human life. We need artists. We need imagination people. We need people who think and contemplate and create stuff. I mean, life would really suck if we didn't have that. We need this kind of knowledge. It's just as important. For Plato, this is much more important. We only deal with this stuff so we can get hit. But it still works. I mean, just as a relationships, images are dependent on sensible objects. Sensible objects are dependent on the laws of nature. If Plato had stopped there, this would be great. You'd be learning this in science classes. But he didn't. Plato went on and said, the laws of nature are not the deepest level of reality. The laws of nature are dependent on something else. And that's what that other thing is referred to as the forms. Now, it seems weird bringing it up like this. It just occurs to me that this is a kind of weird way of doing it. So I'm going to give you a little backstory. Now, you've got to remember that in this classroom, we sit at the end of 2,500 years of development, 2,500 years of thinking over various issues. Plato sat at the start of that process. Plato was one of the guys who invented philosophy. He was one of the first guys to even ask the questions that philosophy tries to answer. So he was confronted with the question: why is there beauty in the world? You can look at stuff and say, hey, that's beautiful. And then look at something else and go, well, that's not beautiful. Why is that thing beautiful and that other thing not? Why is there justice? Why, you remember the Rodney King trial, and the riots that followed it. Why, there's a reaction there. We looked at the police officers getting off, and a lot of us said, that ain't right. That is not justice. Some of us also had the same thing about the Ocho trial. Why is there courage? Why is there piety? Why is there virtue? Why is there good at all? You can look at something and say, hey, that's good. Something else, that's not good. What is the difference? What makes the difference? What is there in the world? And Plato's answer was that these things are built into the fabric of reality. They are, in fact, the deepest truth. They are deeper in the world than the laws of nature. Something is beautiful. God, I wish there was something beautiful in this part of the room that I could point at.
Prayer.
All right. Okay. Contemplate. What's your name again?
Eric.
Eric. Contemplate Eric. See how beautiful he is. We know, but we're just playing along. Then, pretend the coffee cup is beautiful. What would it have in it that made it beautiful? And as Plato is saying, look, there's something in the universe that is entered into this thing that isn't entered into the things around it. There's the beauty. It's an ontological concept. Beauty exists independent of beautiful things. So you can see there's lots of beautiful things. Imagine it this way. If we lost the strong nuclear force, what would happen? If we lost the energy, the force that keeps, I think it's protons and neutrons together in an atomic nucleus. If we lost that force, protons would no longer bind to neutrons. What would happen? Everything would fall apart. There would be no more matter as we know it. It would be just a plasma. There would not be elements, right, let alone people. There wouldn't be chemical compounds or even elements. There wouldn't be hydrogen. It would all go away. Now think about this thing and think of beauty as something like a force. Imagine in Plato's terms, if Plato was right about beauty, what would happen if the form of beauty departed from the universe? Nothing would be beautiful. Life would be really, really boring because everything would be like just everything else. There'd be no point in, turning to look at anything. You wouldn't stop and smell the roses, right? Museums? Who would have a museum? Imagine walking into the Sistine Chapel and looking up and going, it's a ceiling. Or the Mona Lisa, which I'm not really impressed by, but it's the only painting I can think of, and going, it's a picture of a woman. Okay? Think about the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. I was once watching a football game, and this one dude jumped right over another dude. That was sweet. And you can imagine watching that and going, okay, a touchdown, a home run. One of the most beautiful moments in history of anything, Babe Ruth's cold shot. You ever get to hear about that? Babe is at the end of his career. He gets up to the plate, he takes his bat, and he goes, and then the guy pitches, he hits, home run, over the fence, that way. It's an amazing thing. Can you imagine just sort of looking at that and going, okay, he hit a ball with a stick. Life would suck without beauty. And Plato thinks that beauty is a real thing, and it is in fact more real than the laws of physics. It's more real than quantum mechanics. And the same for justice. The same for good. good is the ultimate form. All of the forms, beauty and justice are two forms of the same thing. The two aspects of this thing that Plato calls the good. So, imagine you go through life and you divide things up into the good stuff and the not so good stuff. Plato will come along and tell you the reason you made that decision, the reason you divided things up like that, was because you were affected by the good. You were reacting to the good in those things. There was a quality that's placed there by the universe itself.
Wouldn't beauty and justice be considered like a non-temporary thing, or
Do you think they're
I
eternal?
mean, a temporary thing? Well, no, I mean, wouldn't it be considered a temporary thing, or based on where you are, like the African
Well,
women
consider-
that they're next or something?
Well, consider well, the laws of nature. We now know that the laws of nature, as we understand them here, are not eternal. At conditions of very high temperature and pressure, the forces are unified. And it's entirely possible that there have been or will be universes that don't have the same laws of nature. That it's always morally wrong to unnecessarily torture a sentient being. So in a sense, moral laws are eternal, whatever forms of life there are. This is why, I read a lot of science fiction. And most of it is about humans acting like humans. It's very hard to write a book about a truly alien culture. And generally speaking, when a writer writes about a truly alien culture, or something that's an attempt at a truly alien culture, they use humans, because they might as well. You don't have to have the aliens be, have tentacles. If you're writing about aliens, generally speaking, they'll have the same concepts of justice and courage and so on that we will, because there's something inherent in being intelligent life and dealing with problems in the world that means certain things have to be the way they are. It just occurred to me, it's really freaking weird to me that I don't see the word love up here. I don't even see it in the book. That would be just one of the highest possible values. Yeah, it doesn't get in the book. I don't know. Aliens will fall in love with each other. Something absolutely eternal. I had a conversation on a train with a guy who's a top hat hacker. One of these guys who could take down the internet, but he's got other things to do. He's working on an artificial intelligence that he wants to release into the net to live there. And we were talking about it, and I said, well, you're going to give it free will and this thing and that thing. And he said, sure, of course. And then he said something like, I want it to love me. I want it to be capable of loving. So we're talking about an abstract computer program, an artificial intelligence capable of love. As we'll see later in the semester, why the hell not? So there is a sense that these things are more eternal. They're not just put in the fabric of space, they're in the fabric of reality. They seem it's like they're in the fabric of reality. But Plato thinks that they're ontologically real, that they have being, that they have an existence that's like heaven, like paradise, like Valhalla. They're off in another realm. And we get shadows of them. My daughter calls sun rays God rays. You know, when you see the cloud, the sun's behind the cloud, and there's rays of lights coming out, she calls them God rays. And you can, that's Plato's image of the forms. They're out there glowing like the sun behind the clouds, and they shine down on the world. And where they hit, you get things like beauty and justice. We don't make beauty. We don't make justice. The forms do it. The forms are, if a human tries to create a beautiful thing, but it doesn't get illuminated by the forms, it won't be beautiful. So, Plato, this is the most real of anything. And knowledge of the forms, knowledge of the good, is the highest kind of knowledge. It's the most important thing you can possibly know. For Plato, that's philosophy. If you know this, you know the most important thing. You're doing the most important knowledge. Now, Plato's been accused of being elitist because it's a fact that in order to do the kind of contemplation that you need to get this kind of knowledge, you have to have a lot of leisure time. You have to be able to sit around thinking and talking with your friends. You can't be out of the fields working. This has been called elitist. But it's not, because Plato never says that only aristocrats are capable of this. He probably was elitist because all rich Greeks were at that time. But this theory is not elitist. If a peasant is taken out of peasantry and given the leisure time to study this, if he's got the brains to do it, he could do it. The theory here only says that this is the highest kind of knowledge. It is just a function of just how hard it is that you need this contemplation time.
What concepts does conscious fit in?
I don't know.
Beginner thinking or theory?
Let's call it that. The trouble with the book is that it takes modern words and tries to fit them into Plato's epistemology. Right? This is opinion, this is knowledge. But that changes the meaning of the word knowledge. For Plato, knowledge is justified true belief. If you have a justified true belief about Mickey Mouse, you have a justified true belief. Even though it's only knowledge of an image. So it's trivial. I want to call it trivial knowledge. The kind of stuff that if you know it, you don't really know anything. Plato is very dismissive of this. Concepts. Well, this is all concepts. The whole thing is a concept. So I don't want to fit. If you take the modern word concept and try to fit it into here, it blurs over the whole thing. So the way I want to teach this, the way I've been teaching this the last few years, is that look at the ontology. Everything hangs on the ontology. There is a highest level of reality, and then there's the degenerate forms of reality. There's the good is reality itself. It's the most real thing. The forms are aspects of that. Laws of nature are dependent on the forms. Sensible objects are dependent on the laws of nature. Images are dependent on sensible objects. You have these dependency relationships between the levels. Everything else hangs on this. The epistemology here, the other side of the line, is just knowledge of, knowledge of, knowledge of, knowledge of. So Plato has great admiration for this, contempt for this. Okay, thanks very much.